Norway, a land of mountains, deep forests, and long winters. For most of its modern history, it was a quiet and peaceful nation, but in April 1940, that peace was shattered. The German invasion changed everything, and out of that darkness rose men and women who refused to give in. One of them was Manus, known to the world simply as Max Manus. He would become one of Norway's most famous resistance fighters, a man whose courage and ingenuity helped strike at the Nazi occupation from within. This is his story. Max Manus was born on December 9, 1914 in Bergen, Norway. His father, Gerhard, was Norwegian. His mother, Emma, was Danish. The family later moved to Oslo, where Max grew up with a restless energy and a sense of independence that would shape his entire life.
Jeg hadde jo en veldig rar barndom fordi min mor var dansk. Jeg er født I Bergen, men jeg var jo oppdratt I Danmark og snakket dansk.
He was bright, but easily bored. Teachers said he preferred adventure to study. He loved swimming, skiing, and climbing. Friends later remembered him as daring, cheerful, and quick to laugh. After finishing school, Max worked in different jobs and traveled abroad. He spent time in Canada, the United States, and South America, where he learned Spanish and saw poverty and hardship firsthand. Those experiences helped shape his views about freedom, justice, and standing up to oppression. By the time he returned to Norway in 1939, Europe was already on the edge of war. When the Soviet Union invaded Finland in late 1939, many Norwegians sympathized with their Finnish neighbors.
Finland is attacked, and the first bombs fall on the aerodrome at Helsinki. These, they say, did little harm, but later raids are responsible for terrible casualties. The reason for this? The Soviet, a nation of some 180 millions, has been threatened by the 4 millions in Finland. The security of the Red Army is apparently endangered. The huge Russian Air Force, probably the biggest in the world, fears for its very existence.
Max was among those who volunteered to help. He joined a group of Norwegian volunteers fighting in the so-called Winter War. The conditions were brutal. Temperatures dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. Fighting took place in forests, snowfields, and frozen lakes. Max served as a courier and later in combat support roles. The experience taught him about hardship, courage, and survival. He saw death for the first time and realized that war was not glorious. It was grim and personal. The Winter War ended in March 1940, and Max returned to Norway. He hoped peace might last, but within weeks, his own country would be under attack. On April 9, 1940, German forces invaded Norway. They came by sea and air, taking Oslo, Bergen, Trondheim, and Narvik in rapid succession. The Norwegian army resisted, but was overwhelmed. The royal family and government fled to Britain, forming a government in exile. At home, the Germans installed Vidkun Quisling, who collaborated with the occupiers. His name would later become a synonym for traitor. For ordinary Norwegians, daily life changed overnight. German soldiers patrolled the streets. Resistance was dangerous, and yet it began almost immediately.
9. april så ble jeg dimittert, og det kan jeg fortelle deg, det var lite moro. En finne som stod der kaldt og nøktern og sa, Norge var blitt okkupert av tyskerne, og nordmennene hadde ikke gjort motstand. Takk for I aften, tenkte vi.
Max Manus refused to accept occupation. Along with friends, he joined the early underground resistance. They distributed illegal newspapers, printed anti-Nazi pamphlets, and listened secretly to radio broadcasts from London. The group operated under constant threat of discovery by the Gestapo, the German secret police. Meetings took place in basements and attics. Supplies like typewriters and ink had to be hidden carefully. Their early actions were simple but symbolic. Messages like H7 for King Haakon VII appeared on walls and fences around Oslo. It reminded people that Norway had not surrendered in spirit. In 1941, the Gestapo cracked down on resistance networks. Max was arrested and interrogated. He was beaten repeatedly, but refused to give up names or details. After weeks of torture, he was sent to a hospital to recover from his injuries. From there, he made a daring escape, slipping out a window and fleeing into the night.
Så fikk jeg forbindelse ut gjennom nattsøster, og fikk jeg smuglet inn et fiskesnøre, Og så fikk vi avtalt da at jeg skulle prøve også å rømme. Sykesøsteren var med på hele leken. Og så måtte jeg for sin skyld klappe til henne, så at hun kunne si om hun var blitt slått ned. Og så åpnet jeg vinduet, heiste ut fiskesnøret, bandt på et tau. Så heiste jeg opp tauet, du vet, på Ullevål, da var det jo veldig høyt ned. Og så gikk jeg ut i rumpa bare i nattskjorten.
With help from fellow resistors, he made his way to Sweden, which remained neutral. He was thin, weak and scarred, but alive. In Sweden, Max could have stayed safe, but he wanted to continue fighting. From Stockholm, he joined others trying to reach Britain to join the Free Norwegian forces. The journey was long and dangerous. He traveled through the Soviet Union, the Middle East and across Europe before finally reaching Scotland. It took months of constant movement and risk. In Scotland, he joined Company Linge, the Norwegian Independent Company No. 1. It was a special operations unit trained by the British for sabotage and guerrilla warfare in occupied Norway. Training in Scotland was intense. Max learned to handle explosives, dive, climb, use weapons, and communicate secretly by radio. He also studied navigation and sabotage techniques. The men of Company Linge were a mix of backgrounds like students, sailors, farmers, but all shared one purpose: to free Norway. Max quickly stood out for his energy and creativity. He developed plans that used small teams and stealth rather than open combat. The British admired his courage. They called him resourceful and fearless. In late 1942, Max Manus parachuted back into Norway. Landing in the dark forests outside Oslo, he re-entered a country under strict German control. He carried false papers, weapons and money to organize sabotage operations. Working with local resistance members, Max formed small groups that could strike and disappear quickly. Their main targets were ships in Oslo harbor, used by the Germans to transport supplies and troops. He coordinated carefully, often watching harbors for weeks to learn patterns of guards and patrols. Max and his teams used limpet mines, explosives with magnetic clamps that attached to ship hulls. At night, they paddled through icy waters in small boats, diving beneath ships to place the charges. They set time delays and paddled away before the explosions. The first successful missions destroyed several cargo ships and supply vessels in 1943. These acts damaged German logistics and boosted Norwegian morale. The operations required nerve and precision. If discovered, they would have been executed on the spot. But Max and his men continued, mission after mission. One of Max Manus's most famous missions was the sinking of the SS Donau, a large German transport ship docked in Oslo harbor. On the night of January 16, 1945, Max and his comrades swam under the ship and attached limpet mines. They barely escaped detection. Hours later, explosions tore through the hull. The Donau sank in the fjord. It was one of the most effective sabotage operations in occupied Norway. The attack disrupted German troop movements and became a symbol of resistance strength. By 1944, Max was one of the most wanted men in Norway. Gestapo posters offered large rewards for his capture. He moved constantly between safe houses, using disguises and false identities. He trusted only a few people. Friends were arrested and executed. He survived several close calls. Despite the danger, he refused to flee again. He wanted to fight until Norway was free.
Another recent liberation was that of the beautiful city of Oslo, capital of Norway. This, the home of the original Quisling, was also the center of the most determined opposition to German persecution and oppression, gallantly and continuously carried on by the vast majority of the Norwegian people. The liberation was headed by a party which flew to Oslo, led by Air Commodore Darrow. And by the way, everyone will be delighted to see how he curtly refused the insolent offer of a handshake by the German colonel commanding the area. The rest of the story was one of the wildest jubilation. V-Day in Oslo, in fact, and what a day. It might be a good idea if the people of Germany were compelled to see from time to time not only pictures of concentration camps, but also pictures like this. It might help them to grasp the fact that they're the most loathed and despised people in Europe. Freedom from German rule, in fact, turned Oslo into a kind of heaven.
In May 1945, Germany surrendered. Norway was free again. Crowds filled the streets waving flags. After 5 years of occupation, the nightmare was over. For Max Manus, it was a moment of triumph and sadness. He had survived, but many of his closest friends had not. He was decorated with the War Cross with Sword, Norway's highest military honor, and several foreign medals for bravery. But he often said the real reward was seeing his country free. After the war, Max tried to build a normal life. He married Ida Nicoline Lee Lindebracker, a woman who had also served in the resistance. Together, they created a home and started a business. Max founded Max Manus AS, a company selling office machines and later communication technology. It grew into a successful enterprise, giving him a stable livelihood and a way to contribute to society in peace. However, peace brought its own challenges. Like many veterans, Max struggled with memories of the war. He suffered from nightmares and periods of depression. At the time, there was little understanding of what we now call post-traumatic stress. In 1945 and 1946, Max published 2 books, It Would Be Good and It Gets Serious. These memoirs described his experiences during the occupation. They were honest and direct, showing both courage and doubt. He wrote to honor the memory of fallen comrades and to remind Norwegians of the cost of freedom. The books became popular, translated into several languages, and remain important historical documents. In the decades that followed, Max spoke at schools and public events. He believed young people should know what had happened during the war and why democracy must be defended. He did not glorify violence. Instead, he emphasized moral courage, the ability to stand up for what is right even when it is dangerous. For him, resistance was not only about weapons, it was about conscience and conviction. Many Norwegian resistance members faced difficulties after the war. Some found it hard to adapt to ordinary life after years of secrecy and danger. Max was among them. He spoke openly about his inner struggles. Although he appeared cheerful and successful, the memories of loss and suffering never left him. He sought peace in work, friendship, and family, but he carried the past quietly within him. Through the 1950s and 1960s, Max continued running his company and stayed active in veterans organizations. He met with younger soldiers and freedom fighters from around the world, sharing experiences and emphasizing the importance of moral integrity. He kept in contact with surviving comrades, especially Gunnar Sundsteby, who became Norway's most decorated war hero. Their friendship lasted a lifetime. Max also supported historical research and museums dedicated to the resistance. He wanted the truth preserved for future generations. In his later years, Max lived quietly in Oslo. He enjoyed spending time by the sea, reading, and reflecting on the years gone by. He rarely spoke about his personal pain, but friends knew he carried it with dignity. He remained humble, saying he was simply one of many who did what had to be done. Max Manus died in 1996 at the age of 81. He was buried with military honors, surrounded by family, friends, and fellow veterans. Today, Max Manus is remembered as one of Norway's greatest resistance fighters. His life represents courage, loyalty, and the defense of freedom against tyranny. In 2008, the Norwegian film Max Manus, Man of War introduced his story to a new generation. The movie, based on his books and historical records, renewed interest in the resistance and its human cost. Schools continue to teach about his missions and his values. Memorials, plaques, and exhibitions in Oslo honor his contribution. His name stands beside those of countless others who risked everything for their country. The story of Max Manus is not just about war, it is about responsibility. The idea that ordinary people can make extraordinary choices when confronted with injustice. He once said that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. That lesson remains as true today as it was in 1940. Through his example, generations of Norwegians have learned that freedom must never be taken for granted. It requires vigilance, sacrifice, and moral strength. When we think of Max Manus, we remember a man who refused to accept tyranny, a man who fought not for glory but for the right of his people to live free. From the frozen forests of Finland to the dark waters of Oslo Harbor, his courage left a mark on history. He was part of a generation that showed the world the strength of the human spirit. Today, Norway stands as a peaceful, democratic nation.